Welcome back to Bounce Around Charleston. Standing here with me, a great man in the news arena.
Well, thank you.
Brother Raphael James.
Yes, sir.
Welcome to Bounce Around Charleston.
Thank you very much for having me.
Your job is to talk about some of the top stories of 2013.
Yes, sir.
What can you talk about?
Well, we had quite a few of them. When I was asked to go back and find out what the top stories were, it was kind of hard because all of these stories started flooding my mind.
Right.
But since I said flooding, let's start there. You are very familiar with your church
I can
being
talk
on the
about
crosstown.
that. Yes, sir.
About flooding. The city has done a number of repairs, and it seems things are starting to get better. Would you attest to that?
Sometimes okay. Okay.
So they did a lot of work there on the crosstown. I think
Yes, sir.
that's where it started at. And they're hoping to really alleviate that. It's been a problem for years, and many of you who live in downtown in that area, you know that. So,
Raphael, there are sometimes on Sunday mornings we can't even go to church.
I believe it. I believe it.
Because the water is so high. And then I have members that have lost cars, had to buy new cars, because while we were in service, the water came and damaged their cars.
I know a guy who lives down there, and he has to pay close attention to the weather report and the tides just to know if he needs to park his car here or park it a few blocks away.
Yes, sir.
So that's definitely one story, and we'll continue to follow that. Another big story, I think, was the 526 extension. That project has been in the works for a long time.
Yes, sir. Now, okay, if the project is completed, where will it end?
It will end on James Island.
Okay.
And that is the terminus that everybody's expecting it will end. And they've been talking about expanding it for many, many years. And now finally things are moving in that direction.
So what has been the problem with that?
Well, the problem is you've got some people who don't necessarily want it to be extended. They like their way of life. They like the pastoral scenery that's out there, the rural feel, the rural vibe that they have, and they don't want to change that.
So they would much rather get in all that traffic sometimes and wait sometimes 45 minutes to an hour to get on James Island.
They paid a lot of money, some of them,
Wow.
to live out there, and that is one of the perks of being out there, secluded. But as you mentioned, the hurricane evacuations, when it comes time for that, having that extra road there will alleviate a lot of the traffic that's out there on the roadways in the event of a storm or you have to get out of town quickly. So towards that end, I think you have a lot of people who are on board, and now the plan is moving forward.
Okay.
Another one you may agree with me was a big story of the year. Senator Robert Ford. He's been a long-standing politician in South Carolina.
Yes, sir.
And his resignation was somewhat shocking. Then he was investigated for ethics and he resigned. In the midst of all of that, Marlon Kempson, a newcomer, he put his hat in the ring, ran for the seat in a special election, and won it. So now we're looking to see what Marlon Kempson can bring to the arena.
Senator Ford has always been such a major voice in our communities. Oh, people just look up to him, and if he says it, they believe it.
Well, I don't look for Senator Ford to stop being that voice, stop being vocal. We get emails from him here in the station all the time. Just because he's not in Columbia doesn't mean he's not talking about causes that he cares about.
Okay.
And one other story we covered a whole lot was the baby Veronica story. You're very familiar with that.
Very touching story.
Yeah, the Matt and Melanie Capobianco adopted the young girl after getting everything in place with the biological mother, and they thought they had a child that that they could grow old with. Well, after 2 years of having her, the biological father was granted the rights, and he came and got her and took her to Oklahoma.
And I saw such an emotional situation at the very end when he sat in front of the cameras and had to really realize, okay, I've got to allow her to go back to her adoptive parents.
There are a lot of different it's just very broad, this story. You've got the Capobiancos, who obviously were hurting to lose the little girl the first time. You've got Mr. Dustin Brown, who had to give away his blood child. And then you've got Veronica, who's had to live most of her life with different people.
So how will this impact her life?
Let's hope that she'll be able to move forward and have a rich life and rich families. They have expressed interest in being able to have her visit her family and blood family in Oklahoma, and they're trying to be open to that. I'm not sure where that stands right now, but that would be the best case scenario. And like I said, when this first started happening, she was 2 years old. Then she went for 2.5 years, met her cousins and stepsisters and stepbrothers, and now to be back here. So it's got to be pretty hard.
Okay, so we thank you for the top stories. But now let's talk about Raphael James.
Okay.
Okay, tell the people where you're from, what brought you to Charleston,
Okay,
and how are you liking it here?
Oh, wow. Well, I'm from Augusta, Georgia, originally, home of Godfather Soul James Brown. Good guy. You got to get that in there. And I started out in radio there, and then went into television, and Augusta's my home. After a while, though, I wanted to move away from home, and Charleston had an opening. I came here, applied for the job, got it, and loved it. Been here ever since. Love it. Love the history, love the people, love the feel. It's just, I always say I enjoy history, and you can't very well start down a study of your history without starting here in Charleston. Not only the country's history, but as African Americans, a lot of our history started here. Many of my ancestors walked onto this country, down by where the aquarium is now, that wharf.
Okay. When you do a news story, what inspires you to write that story?
Well, in terms of finding the story, the first thing is making sure that it's something that people are going to be interested in. Does this story command attention? Are there people out there who are going to care about this story? Now, sometimes we'll do a story that maybe a lot of people don't care about, but it's a good story, it's educational, and maybe they need to know about it. So sometimes we will do those kinds of stories, but I get asked all the time, what do you guys look for when you do a story? Well, that's it. Who is it going to impact? Is it important? Do they need to know?
We thank you for being on Bounce Around Charleston.
It is my pleasure.
And sharing with us the top news stories. Follow Raphael James on Twitter at Raph James, and on Facebook at Raphael Live 5 News. I follow you on Facebook.
All right.
Coming up, Bounce reporter Michelle Lemon.